Hello, Cleveland, and welcome to another episode of the North Coast SportsCast. I am your host, Jack McCurry. Got a fun episode coming today. We're going to talk some Cavaliers basketball, and, I had to get a good guest, and I think I definitely got one of the best to talk Cavs basketball. He is the co-host of The Next Level on ESPN 850 WKNR in Cleveland. He covers the Cavs, he covers the Indians, and he's one of my favorite sports talk hosts in Cleveland, and I'm happy to have him on. And it's Emmett Golden. Emmett, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm good. Now I feel like I gotta, pay you a little more money for having me on with that great intro there.
Oh, man. Well, I'm really excited to have you on. You've always been one of my favorites on the sports talk radio scene. And, when I wanted to talk Cavs, especially because the postseason's right around the corner, you were at the top of my list. So I'm very appreciative for you to come on. We were just talking right before we started recording about last night's game. I felt for the media they had to watch that bad basketball game between the Cavs and the Knicks. What was it like for you as someone covering the game? I compared it to a Browns preseason game, but how did it feel for you having to cover it?
That's actually fairly accurate. It was a lot like a Browns preseason game. But what I do in those situations is I know the game really isn't that important, especially once we knew what was going to go on as far as who we were going to face, what seed we were going to have. When that just kind of became like, all right, we know what's going on. Then you start looking at stuff around the game, was fan appreciation night, what type of stuff are they giving away? You just have to find other ways and find other stories because, again, the game was so terrible. That's how you do it. When you sit there, you have to find something. I'm fortunate where I don't write, so I don't have to write a game story, but it's important for me as a host to really pay attention to the other levels and the other things that are going on around the building. So whenever I'm in a situation where it's a terrible team in town, or there's been times when we've been that terrible team, I just have to find other things and other ways to make it entertaining and interesting for myself, and then giving me something interesting to talk about the next day on the show.
Absolutely, and I know it was entertaining for you, regardless of who was on the floor, and you support him so much on social media, and that's Jetty. And him, along with Ante Zizic, both had some pretty good performances, albeit against the terrible New York Knicks team. But it was nice to see Jetty and Ante get those minutes and show the NBA what they can do if given the minutes, albeit against a garbage team.
Yeah, they're not ready to be the centerpiece of a team by any means, but I just love the way that both of those guys, they play, with Jetty, just how hard he plays, and then just the tools that he has. He's tall, he can handle the ball, he can pass a little bit, can shoot it. He's not the greatest shooter, but I can see that, he has the ability to become a better shooter once he really gets used to the NBA game. So that's why I really like Jetty. There's an innocence to his game. Like, he's just really out there enjoying every moment that his sneakers are on the hardwood, and I love that about him. And with Zizic, he's a tall, true center, and there aren't many of those left. And again, you see the tools. I mean, last night he was 7 of 9, for 20 points. Now, albeit against some scrubs, but I mean, that's big. Those are valuable minutes. I don't expect him to smell the floor in the playoffs, but it was good just to see him get out there and get some run. So I'm happy that those two guys could possibly be in the future of the Cavs. But just knowing if LeBron James comes back, knowing how the Cavaliers like to shuffle their roster, those are two attractive trade pieces. I hope they hold on to those guys, but if not, they got some ammunition, because those are two players that I think have bright futures in the NBA.
Definitely. What they were coming into the season and watching them progress as the year went on, it was very exciting to see those guys could be two foundational pieces, whether LeBron's here and they could be trade pieces, like you said, or if LeBron ends up leaving and they're going to be part of the core going forward. But, transitioning to LeBron, this has been, I think, his best season in his 15-year career. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, first of all, I don't recognize the Miami year, so do you think that this is best year as a Cavalier for sure? To do what he's been able to do, 15 years deep in the NBA, the fact that he's had so many bests this year, career best in games, career best in a number of categories after being in the league for 15 years, and we're talking about playing deep in all the way to the finals for many, many years, and then playing in the Olympics and on the Olympic team for many years. There are a ton of miles on his body, and the way he takes care of his body, it just seems like he's getting better, and that's unheard of for a guy that's been around as long as LeBron has. So I would agree that this was his best season ever, and that's why I'm excited, for the playoffs to start. I feel like the Cavaliers definitely underachieved this year, but now it's real. They went through the whole regular season just to get ready for this moment. And when you have LeBron James, like he always says, you definitely have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, looking at LeBron's numbers, 27.5 points, 8.6 rebounds, 9 assists, a steal and a half and a block. I mean, it was a typical LeBron season, except he turned it up a notch. And we all know when it gets to the postseason times, he turns it up even another notch. If you had an MVP vote, how would your top three go? And do you think LeBron made a strong enough case to maybe push past James Harden for the award?
Well, my top three would be LeBron, Russell Westbrook, and then James Harden. I know a few people who have votes, and everybody says, I won't say everybody, a couple of guys say they're going to vote for Harden. I think it's a situation where last year a lot of the writers felt like, man, Harden was the MVP, but Russ did something that was historic, so they had to give it to him. By the way, Russ did something historic again this year, but I think a lot of the writers feel like, man, we owe it to James to give him the MVP. He's on the best team. He had a really good year. I mean, he's had a great year. I'm not going to take anything away from him. So I think a lot of the voters feel obligated to give it to the Beard this year, but just knowing that LeBron lost the second best player on his team, you have a situation where Harden, he gained Chris Paul. I mean, I'm pretty sure that helped him out a little bit, but LeBron was able to elevate his game, and for the most part, they had the exact same record, they being the Cavs, that they did last year, just short one win. And just through all the roster transitions and Kevin Love being out, and I mean, everybody's been hurt except LeBron. At some point this year, it's been an amazing year, an amazing job by LeBron James. I just feel like a lot of the voters feel obligated to give it to James Harden because they feel like he deserved it last year, but with Russ averaging a triple-double, they gave it to him. So I think this is a make-good.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, but like you said, everything LeBron had to go through, a brand new roster practically, easing in Isaiah Thomas, Kevin Love getting hurt, then shuffling half the roster in a trade, not to mention Ty Lue and his health situation, and LeBron still nearly averaged almost a triple-double. I mean, I think it'll be closer than people expect, but I would agree with you that Harden has had an unbelievable year, Houston's had an unbelievable year, and I feel like you said, the media is obligated to give him that award. Let's address the elephant in the room. We all know the Tristan Thompson situation that's ongoing. He played a lot last night in that finale against the Knicks. What do you see his role going into the postseason, if he has a role at all?
I don't believe he will have a role in the playoffs. It really last week, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, post game we asked Ty Lue about, hey, Tristan, Larry Nance Jr., somebody's not going to play. Which one of those guys, will get the minutes in the playoffs? And Ty said, you're right. Someone will not be playing out of those two. We haven't made that decision yet, which I didn't believe him. But if you can kind of just look for yourself, you can tell that the Cavaliers are way more productive when Larry Nance Jr. is on the court. So I expect Larry to get the minutes and Tristan to be on the bench for the most part, unless there's a situation or a matchup thing. That's the thing about the playoffs is the rotations aren't true rotations. Most coaches plan on playing 7, and with the 8th guy getting just a handful of minutes, and usually that 8th guy is a matchup guy, whatever, just in reaction to what the other team is doing, or maybe forcing the other team's hand. So I don't see Tristan playing much, if at all, this year. And I mean, I know he's been hurt and he's had injuries. He just hasn't been what he used to be. I mean, he used to be Larry Nance Jr., and he's not that. At least he hasn't been that this year. And they got another guy that's athletic and can set solid screens and can jump and finish at the rim and rebound. So I don't see many minutes for Tristan in the postseason.
Do you think, with Tristan's off the court situation, developing as the hours seem to pass, do you think the Cavs are worried that this is going to become a distraction for them?
Look, it seemed like it last night. It was funny. Like I said at the beginning of the interview, sometimes you got to pay attention to other things when the game isn't good. And I was wondering how the crowd was going to react when Tristan Thompson got announced when he entered the game. The Cavaliers didn't announce Tristan Thompson when he got into the game. It was so funny to me, because you could tell that they didn't want the home team or a home player to be booed, and I totally get it. But they typically, after a timeout, if there's new players on the floor, they say now in the game for your Cavaliers, Tristan Thompson. They didn't do that. They just start playing the game. So I do think they are worried about it being maybe a distraction for the fans and stuff. I don't believe it'll be a distraction for the guys in the room, because he won't play. I don't think he's going to play very much. So I think in the locker room, they're not worried about it, but I do think the organization, they just don't want people booing a player at home. So I think it's a distraction for like the PR staff, but I don't believe it's a distraction for the coaches or the players.
The Cavs finished with 50 wins. They are the 4 seed. They'll be taking on Indiana. Game 1 is Sunday in Cleveland. Indiana, I was surprised by their record this year. With the whole Paul George situation last summer, people expected the Pacers to sink down and be one of the bottom teams in the league, but Oladipo broke out, and Sabonis, it turned into be a solid player for them as well. And, they're right in it. They're the 5th seed in the East. How do you think Indiana matches up with Cleveland as we head into the postseason?
I think they match up with them pretty well. Obviously, they don't have the experience that most of the Cavaliers have. I mean, the Cavs have some guys who will be in the playoffs for the first time in their career themselves, but you have LeBron and Swish and Kyle and Love. You have guys who've been all the way to the NBA Finals, and there aren't a lot of guys like that on the Pacers. You do have to worry about Victor Oladipo. He is a problem. There's no doubt about that. And he plays well against the Cavs. Something tells me he feels like he was better than Anthony Bennett when the Cavaliers drafted Anthony Bennett number 1 overall, if I'm not mistaken, in the same draft that Oladipo was in. So he always comes and brings it when he plays against the Cavs. So I expect him to have a great series. I just don't know if they have enough around him to contend with LeBron and Love and everything the Cavaliers can do once they really get out and they start running. And the Cavaliers will play defense in the postseason. I don't expect them, to become the Detroit Pistons, of the 80s and 90s and stuff, but they will be much better defensively in the playoffs. So I don't think that the Pacers have enough, but there'll be some good games. I don't expect blowouts here, but I could see the Cavs winning in 4 or 5 games.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Is there a player under the radar on the Pacers that Cavs fans should pay attention to, that we should be worried about? Lance Stevenson, obviously we know his history with LeBron in the postseason, but is there another guy besides Oladipo and maybe a Miles Turner that we should be watching out for?
Bogdanovich, I like his game. He's a good shooter, so he can get hot. I would keep an eye out for him. If he gets some open shots, he can really start to fill it up. So I keep an eye on him. He would be the one guy I would say that you keep your eye on.
And you did say that you think the Cavs are gonna win in 4 or 5 games, right? Yeah. I could see them maybe losing 1 in Indiana. I don't think Indiana will take it here in Cleveland at all. So I definitely
I don't want to say they're going to sweep them because that would be me just going like, oh, it's the Cavs. They're going to sweep everybody because they do every year for the most part. And I'm trying my best not to be that guy, but I just don't see this being a long series. I mean, I'd be shocked if it goes 6, but I definitely don't believe it will go any further than that, and that would really be surprising to me if it went that far.
Do you think with Kyrie going down in Boston that the Cavs' road back to the finals got a lot easier, or do you still think that Toronto and even Philadelphia will give the Cavs a hard time and say the Eastern Conference Finals?
I think Philly is going to be the toughest matchup for the Cavaliers, even if Kyrie Irving were healthy. The Cavaliers kind of proved it, after the trade. They go into Boston and they destroyed the Celtics. And I think that was just like, hey, letting everybody know, like, we still have LeBron, and the Celtics will be good. They'll be good for a long time. But I just felt like LeBron he wasn't going to let a loss happen against the Celtics. They have mind control over the Raptors. The Raptors, they see the wine and gold, and they go like, we're going to do it this time. And then they just absolutely crumble at the first sign of any type of problems or any type of adversity. But the 76ers, I don't believe they'll make it. They'll beat the Cavs, but I do think it'll be a great, great series. I don't think they have the experience to get past the Cavaliers. I'm a firm believer in you have to get there and lose before you can get there and win. And I think this is going to be the year where they're going to win a couple series, but ultimately they will fall to the Cavaliers. And I could see that series going 6 or 7 games if they were to meet up in the playoffs. So the top 2 teams in the East, they don't worry me at all. But that Philly team, they're really good with size and length, and they're young. They're young, and they don't know the difference. They don't know the difference. And they have shooters out there. I mean, J.J. Redick is their answer to our Kyle Korver. He's a great 3-point shooter. So I would be more, if I'm worried about anybody, which I'm not really, but if I was to worry about anybody, it'd be the 76ers.
Are you amazed at how quickly they were able to turn things around in a year from, having the number 1 pick in the draft to already being the 3rd seed and closing out a season with a 16-game winning streak?
Yeah, I am really surprised at how they were able to just close the season out so strong. I mean, they've never, at least in my lifetime, never have done anything like that since I've been watching those guys play. I mean, the 76ers have been, in recent history anyway, terrible. But, it makes sense. Trust the process, right? It was a joke for a long, long time. But when you have the athletes that they have, all it took was them getting healthy. And once they got healthy, we saw exactly how great these young players are. So, but it is surprising how fast, man. It seems like in a year they went from, I think these guys, who knows if they'll ever see, meet their potential, to, wow, they're actually a pretty good team. So, yeah, I'm extremely surprised.
Yeah, their future is definitely looking bright, and if LeBron does end up leaving, I think they are a dark horse to land his services, but that's a story for another day, and we got to still get through the postseason. But, with that in mind, Emmett, do you have a final prediction on how you think the Cavs season is going to end up?
So I've said this on my show, and, if people want to accuse me of being a homer, I tell them they're 100% correct. But I think the Cavs are going to win it this year. I don't think it'll be easy by any means, but I feel like whenever Cleveland does anything huge, it's always against really tough and really difficult odds. I mean, first championship, they became the first team in NBA history to come back from a 3-1 deficit in the finals. And I just feel like with the roster turnover, the health issues with Ty Lue, the trade, the continue with the trades and the injuries, that this will be the year where the Cavaliers will get to the finals, and I believe it'll be Houston, and Houston will go back to that Saturday night where they absolutely destroyed the Cavaliers and think, oh yeah, this will be an easy one. And next thing you know, they'll be in a dogfight, and I think the Cavaliers will be able to pull it out 7 games just like they did the first time. Hopefully they won't have to come back from a 3-1 deficit, but I really do. I feel like this, just because things were so terrible this year, it's just the irony that is Cleveland, it will turn into an NBA championship this year.
Yeah, I think they definitely have a shot. I think they're going to pull out in the East, but Houston and even Golden State, if they can get back to full strength, I think they're still going to be a threat. They're always going to be when you
Yeah,
have four
yeah,
All Stars
absolutely.
like that.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, it's like I said. To me, if you ask who has the better teams, there's no doubt it's Houston and it's Golden State. I mean, I'd listen if somebody told me that Toronto had a better team than the Cavaliers. I don't know if I would agree with it, but I wouldn't think they were crazy for making that statement. The Cavaliers don't have the best team in the playoffs. They do have the best player in the world, though. And when you have the best player in the world, like LeBron says it, you always have a chance. And the Cleveland Cavaliers have a very real chance to win the championship this year.
Absolutely. When we have LeBron, we always are going to have a chance, and I think that'll hold to fruition until he either leaves or he hangs it up. But Emmett, I thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on my podcast and talk some Cavs with me, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime, man. I think you're a great follow on Twitter now that I follow you. I swear, man, I swear I thought I followed you. I
Well,
swear I was like, I'm like, I follow you, right? And then I looked but what that tells you is that you have so much traction in this city that I see all your tweets from retweets all over. So, man, keep up the good work. And like I said, the fact that I thought I was following you knows that I saw a ton of your tweets, and it's because, man, you got some traction. So keep up the good work.
thanks, man. Do you got anything you want to plug? Anything going on over there at ESPN Cleveland?
Hey, 3 to 5, the next level, Monday through Friday. Me, Gerard, and Matt. You want to listen to three guys have a good time every day? Tune in 8:50 a.m.
Absolutely, man. We'll all be listening. Thank you for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, Jack. Thanks.
And that was Emmett Golden of ESPN Cleveland. I really appreciate him coming on with me. You guys, if you appreciate the podcast, if you're listening on iTunes, give me a review, give me a rating. It doesn't have to be a 5-star rating. Just let me know what you think of the show. Follow the podcast on Twitter at NC SportsCast. That's NC SportsCast. You can follow me personally on Twitter at JMcCurryCLE. The podcast is available on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. And with that, as always, go Cavs, roll Tribe, and go Browns.